Hello and welcome to the Times of India. You're watching Global Pulse with me, Neha Khanna. He came, he saw, he ranted. US President Donald Trump's address at the United Nations General Assembly is making global headlines, but not for reasons that would please him. It was an hour-long address which critics have described as a meandering speech, an unhinged rant, and an embarrassment to America. The predominant themes were very generous self-praise, scathing criticism of the United Nations, and some very controversial remarks on a whole host of global issues. Well, many would argue that the president was rather economical with the truth. And media houses in the US and around the world have been busy fact-checking Donald Trump. Not known for his modesty, Trump gave himself credit for the millionth time for ending 7 wars, including, it seems, some imaginary ones. Once again, he claimed credit for ending the conflict between India and Pakistan, a claim roundly rejected and debunked by India on innumerable occasions. And the president then went on to claim, surprise, surprise, that everyone thinks he deserves a Nobel Peace Prize, so grand are his accomplishments as a global peacemaker. Once again, Trump trained his guns on India as he accused both India and China of being the primary funders of Russia's war in Ukraine. Of course, India is the country that the US president has singled out in recent months for steep punitive tariffs for its purchase of Russian oil. It's another matter that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is the one now fact-checking Trump on this. Zelensky has publicly disputed Trump's claim, stating that India is mostly supportive of Ukraine despite some energy-related challenges, and that Europe must build stronger ties with New Delhi and pull it into their fold rather than pushing it away. Trump then described the United States as entering a golden age under his great leadership, claiming how life for Americans has never been better and inflation has been defeated. Of course, the facts point to the contrary, but that doesn't really seem to matter. Trump labelled climate change as the greatest con job ever perpetrated on the world. He slammed European countries for their renewable energy policies. In fact, he accused his European allies of inviting illegal aliens through open borders and pushing suicidal green energy policies. He warned that these policies would lead to Europe's decline as they threaten, in his view, the economic and cultural fabric of the continent. Throughout his speech, Trump rejected multilateralism, emphasizing on a nationalist approach to global crises. Many have said it sounded like a political rally speech pandering to his MAGA support base rather than one addressing world leaders. Believe it or not, Trump told the gathered world leaders, "Your countries are going to hell." This as he railed against immigration and lax border controls and patted his own back for taking tough action against immigrants across the United States. Well, if you thought that was bad, let me tell you, Trump's most stinging criticism was reserved for the very institution that he was addressing, the United Nations. He called the UN an ineffectual institution, questioned its relevance and purpose, and accused it of issuing empty statements without backing them up with real action. Trump attacked the UN for its aid programs, claiming that instead of preventing invasions, it was creating and financing them through its support to asylum seekers. Remember, under his administration, the US has significantly reduced funding to the United Nations, impacting its humanitarian efforts worldwide. And it gets worse. Trump even roasted the UN over some technical glitches that he experienced, including a broken escalator and teleprompter. He described these as intentional attempts to humiliate him. The White House has since launched an investigation into the escalator malfunction. The right wing on social media is having a field day, floating conspiracy theories, with many calling it a deliberate act of sabotage, and some MAGA megaphones going as far as to say they can smell an assassination attempt on their beloved president. Unlike in previous years, Trump's speech drew silence rather than laughter from the UN General Assembly. Perhaps a good indicator of just how wary even scared the world is of the mercurial and unpredictable US president and the disruptive and destructive policies he's unleashed since he began his second term in office this January. With practically every move of his, from aggressive trade wars to the constant flip-flops on global conflicts, Trump has thrown the international order as we know it into turmoil and complete chaos, leaving everyone on tenterhooks and wondering with trepidation what Donald Trump might do next.
It's too bad that I had to do these things instead of the United Nations doing them. And sadly, in all cases, the United Nations did not even try to help in any of them. I ended 7 wars, dealt with the leaders of each and every one of these countries, and never even received a phone call from the United Nations offering to help in finalizing the deal. All I got from the United Nations was an escalator that on the way up stopped right in the middle. If the First Lady wasn't in great shape, she would have fallen, but she's in great shape. We're both in good shape. We both stood. And then a teleprompter that didn't work. These are the 2 things I got from the United Nations, a bad escalator and a bad teleprompter. Thank you very much. And by the way, it's working now. It just went on. Thank you. That being the case, what is the purpose of the United Nations? The UN has such tremendous potential. I've always said it. It has such tremendous, tremendous potential, but it's not even coming close to living up to that potential. For the most part, at least for now, all they seem to do is write a really strongly worded letter and then never follow that letter up. It's empty words, and empty words don't solve war. The only thing that solves war and wars is action. Not only is the UN not solving the problems it should, too often, it's actually creating new problems for us to solve. The best example is the #1 political issue of our time, the crisis of uncontrolled migration. It's uncontrolled. Your countries are being ruined. The United Nations is funding an assault on Western countries and their borders. In 2024, the UN budgeted $372 million in cash assistance to support an estimated 624,000 migrants journeying into the United States. Then they said global warming will kill the world, but then it started getting cooler, so now they could just call it climate change, because that way they can't miss. It's climate change, because if it goes higher or lower, whatever the hell happens, there's climate change. China and India are the primary funders of the ongoing war by continuing to purchase Russian oil. But inexcusably, even NATO countries have not cut off much Russian energy and Russian energy products, which, as you know, I found out about 2 weeks ago, and I wasn't happy. Think of it. They're funding the war against themselves. Who the hell ever heard of that one? Not only is the UN not solving the problems it should, too often, it's actually creating new problems for us to solve. The best example is the #1 political issue of our time, the crisis of uncontrolled migration. It's uncontrolled. As a result, every air conditioner is like very uncommon to see one in some of these countries because the electric costs are so high. So while the U.S. has approximately 1,300 heat-related deaths annually, that's a lot, Europe loses more than 175,000 people to heat deaths each year because the costs are so expensive you can't turn on an air conditioner. What is that all about? That's not Europe. That's not the Europe that I love and know. All in the name of pretending to stop the global warming hoax. The entire globalist concept of asking successful industrialized nations to inflict pain on themselves and radically disrupt their entire societies must be rejected completely and totally, and it must be immediate. That's why in America I withdrew from the fake Paris Climate Accord, where, by the way, America was paying so much more than every country. Others weren't paying. China didn't have to pay until 2030. Russia was given an old standard that was easy to meet. a 1990 standard. But for the United States, we're supposed to pay like $1 trillion. And I said, this is another scam. The fact is, the United States has been taken advantage of by the world for many, many years, but not any longer, as you probably noticed. I unleashed massive energy production and signed historic executive orders to hunt for oil, but we don't have to do much hunting because we have the most oil of any nation anywhere, oil and gas in the world. And if you add coal, we have the most of any nation in the world. Clean, I call it clean, beautiful coal. You can do things today with coal that you couldn't have done 10 years ago, 15 years. So I have a little standing order in the White House. Never use the word coal, only use the words clean, beautiful coal. Sounds much better, doesn't it? Now, after ending all of these wars and also earlier negotiating the Abraham Accords, which is a very big thing for which our country received no credit, never receives credit. Everyone says that I should get the Nobel Peace Prize for each one of these achievements. But for me, the real prize will be the sons and daughters who live to grow up with their mothers and fathers, because millions of people are no longer being killed